So to round out the It's a Crime, report it, and then we're going to close out with the Path to Healing in just a little bit. I'd like to invite Stephanie Coelho up. She's a child sexual assault victim witness specialist, which is kind of a mouthful, and I needed my printout, with Cook County. And we're just so blessed to have found out about her and learn about her role, because again, there are a lot of folks in the mix that you just would never know about, and I think she'll share an important insight about where she fits in this process. Before we wrap with Dr. Fajara. Here you go.
Thank you. Hi guys, I know we're on time restraints, so I'm going to try to get straight to my good points. But like Tanya said, I do work with, my whole caseload is victims of sexual assault, working with them and their families. I travel all over Cook County to our many courthouses to provide direct support for these families, both in the courthouse while they're going through the criminal court process, but also outside, and connecting them with appropriate resources and things that maybe perhaps my office doesn't provide directly. For example, Christy does a lot of civil litigation, which is separate from the criminal piece, so I might refer clients out to her. People might need some more intensive therapy than what we can provide. There are a lot of resources that are available to victims and their families. But I will say that we work very hard to try to connect with families from the very beginning so that you can get a head start on the therapies, financial resources, but potentially other issues such as custodial issues, divorce, those kinds of things. We try to get you connected as soon as possible. And I will say this too, there's a difference between those resources we just talked about, some of the resources Christy talked about, and the criminal case and the criminal resources and what's going on the criminal side of things. So I do want to point out that if your case is charged, like Detective Rodriguez had mentioned, once the case is charged and the state's attorney's office becomes connected and we start formally prosecuting and moving forward, that's when a state's attorney, a criminal, a lawyer, a prosecutor will be assigned to your case. That is somebody who works for free, who is assigned to your case, and who's going to stick with your case and move forward throughout the prosecution. So I want to make it clear, while you can hire attorneys for a lot of other support services, all these other good pieces like orders of protection and things like that, regarding the criminal matter, the prosecutor is free to you. So you don't necessarily need to hire somebody for that criminal piece, okay? So you don't have to have money to move forward with charges. So I will say this. Make reports. There are a lot of reasons. Christy hit this right off. Make a report often and early is what we say. You got abuse happening, your child discloses, and you might be overwhelmed. All the court process that Detective Rodriguez talked to you about might sound super overwhelming, but there are people, there are court advocates like myself that are there to help you through this process, explain the process, and walk you through each and every step from beginning to end. So there are a lot of resources to help you through this. You're not alone. In making that initial report, I would say to do that for multiple reasons, not just to help us with the criminal case and help us get a head start on it, but more importantly to provide that support to your children. I also work as a clinical counselor, so I will say through my experience and also through research, it shows that the #1 factor in helping a child overcome their abuse is support, and more specifically, family support. Is it Jerry Ann that told her story, gave an amazing example of the costs and benefits of having a family that believes or doesn't believe a child. So I will say, even if you're hesitant about moving forward with the charges, that can be an amazing first step towards healing and empowering your child and showing that support. Because making that report says to your child, I believe you, which is huge. That is huge to the beginning of that child's healing process. So that is a huge reason that I would say move forward. Make that report. If you're questioning it, there are so many more benefits to making those reports than hanging on to it and questioning and holding back. And again, there's so much support available to you as you're going through this process. So don't be overwhelmed. Don't be scared like you're going through it alone, because you're not. And additionally, I also wanted to address some misperceptions. I know people Detective talked about not all cases move forward. Not always do we have the evidence that we need or the support we need to be able to prosecute the case, to be able to move forward. Occasionally we have a not guilty verdict. I'm not going to hide it. Not all of our cases meet that burden of proof. But the misperception sometimes is that the child wasn't believed. Child didn't testify well. Child didn't do this, didn't do that. It is never the case that the child was not believed. That's a huge misperception. So a not guilty verdict or not moving forward with a case is not synonymous with disbelief of a child. So I want to make sure you know that too. That is something that I wanted to delve into more and some of the reasons why a case doesn't always move forward. But I want you to feel encouraged to still make that report. And even if a case isn't initially charged, there's not enough evidence, perhaps another case will come about. Or like the detective said, some other evidence might show up. I'll be honest, actually this is really coincidental, we had a case come in today of a grandfather that had abused his 4-year-old granddaughter. And because she didn't have exactly the verbal skills to express what had happened, there was no what we call corroborative evidence, the additional supporting evidence. They weren't able to charge the case at the time. Fast forward a year later, this is now like a week ago, her older brother finally has the courage to come forward and talk about the abuse that happened to him with the same grandfather. So now we've got 2 different reports, 2 different victims, and that's our corroborative evidence. That is our double support for this charge. So now Grandpa comes to court today, and now he's answering for his crimes. So that's just one example of just I really want to encourage you. I don't want you to be discouraged by the fact that not all cases move forward or there might potentially not be the best outcome. So many things can fall into place later in the game. Evidence can arise later to help push that case forward and move that case forward. So I always want to encourage you to move forward with making a report. And if you have any questions about that, my information's on there. Please call me. If you are even questioning if you should make a police report, call me. And if you don't even feel comfortable talking to me, I've got a million other resources for you. I have court advocates that their sole job is to help you make this decision. So I'm happy to connect you with the right people or talk to you about it myself if you're comfortable with that. So yeah, make reports. I want to encourage you to get connected and make reports, okay? Even if you're doubting that there's enough there, let the detectives worry about that. Let the attorneys worry about that. Your job is to believe your child and move forward, okay? Any questions about that? Okay.